in a matter of moments, my friends, we are hopefully going to be joined by a very, very special guest. If you know me, you know how much this individual means to me. Like I said at the top of the show, the first person that I ever, like as far as a famous person is concerned, first person that I ever looked up to, that I ever admired, that I ever wanted to be like. You know, later I was a gigantic Patrick Ewing fan. He's my favorite basketball player. I loved Thurman Thomas as well. Loved those Knicks teams, those Bills teams. I was an Expos fan and all that. But the first celebrity, if you will, larger than life hero that I ever remember capturing my attention, my love, my admiration was Bret the Hitman Hart. And it was partially because of how cool he looked, the hair, the glasses, the pink, the tights. Still love pink till this day. It was also because of how he wrestled, the intensity. He represented Canada. I love the Hart Foundation, the yin and yang of him and Jim the Anvil Neidhart. I remember when he got screwed, WrestleMania 4 Battle Royal by Bad News Brown, hit him with the I believe it was the Ghetto Blaster. I remember feeling some sort of way. Like this is when wrestling really works. You feel something in your soul. You wanted your guy to go over. You wanted your guy to get that W. And honestly, it was in that moment that I think I fell in love with him. Now, WrestleMania 4 was 1988. So I was 5.5, believe it or not. I was watching wrestling back then. My dad was like, "What are you watching?" I'm like, "Yo, man, Pops, it's Bret Hart. He just got screwed. We need to watch this over and over again." And then I had the rings. I had the LJNs. I would recreate it. And as I've said time and again on the show, getting shots at the doctor, my mom would say, "Close your eyes, think of something that makes you happy." And I remember exactly where I was. I thought of Bret Hart winning the WWF Championship. And this is before he became a single star, before he became, that guy, the champion. But the thought of him winning made me happy. That was my happy place. And I've wanted to have him back on the show for a while now. And I'm really thankful and grateful that Jesse Katz of Roots of Fight, my favorite brand, incredible people, incredible human being. Him in particular, he's been fighting, thriving, scratching, clawing his way to get to this point, has done such a great job. He helped coordinate all of this. And so it is a massive honor for me, a massive privilege to say hello to, in my opinion, the greatest of all time, not just my opinion, everyone's opinion. The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. No one represented this flag on the international stage better than he did. The first man that I ever looked up to, the first man that I ever admired, the first man that I ever wanted to be like as a youngster, to have him on the show, hard to even express into words how much it means. Without further ado, let us say hello to the one and only Bret the Hitman Hart. There he is. Golly. Bret, how are you?
Hey, I'm really good.
It's a huge, huge deal for me, a huge honor for me to have you on the show. It makes me even emotional just talking to you because of how much you've meant to me and so many like me of my age. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
It means a lot to me too. So I appreciate that.
How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. I can't be happier. Everything's really good.
Life is good.
Life is good. The Hitmen are in the playoffs. We're up 2 games. A lot of little things. Everything with my family's good. Things are very positive for me right now.
Lovely to hear that. So happy to hear that. And congrats on the Hitmen. And we are pulling for them. Love what you've been able to do with them over the years. Obviously, and there you are representing one of the great logos, one of the great jerseys in all of sports. Obviously, this past week, at the end of the week, we got some tremendous news. You continue to make history even at this point in your life. You're now going to be the first man to ever be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame 3 different times. 06 as a singles competitor, 19 as a tag team competitor, and now the first match to go into the Hall of Fame. You and Stone Cold back at WrestleMania 13, historic stuff. When did you find out about this?
I found out a few months ago that it was going to happen, but you never know. It's never going to happen till it happens. So, and then I just found out a few days ago, like that the announcement came out, and so that kind of verified that it was in fact going to happen for me. But it's a big honor. I'm really quite proud of that, especially that match and the work that I had with Steve Austin. I think it's, if you ask me in truth if I thought there was a better match somewhere, I mean, I don't think there's been a better match. It was just magic what we did that night.
So that was actually what I was going to ask you. You've had a litany of legendary matches. Where do you rank that one? Is it literally at the top?
It's been at the top probably since I had it, and I have I have like my all time favorites. I think the match I had with the Bulldog at Wembley was probably my first greatest match. In the sense that it was the first one that wasn't a team, or it was just me by myself going out there and putting that match together. And that was a beautiful match. And the Iron Man match with Shawn Michaels, I mean, you can say what you want about our relationship, and the truth is that it's a hard to top that match. That was a great match. And two guys in their prime pitted against each other, both going 100 miles an hour, giving everything they could. And those are my top three. But Steve Austin match was just such a gem. Like all the little things in it, the little twists and turns, and the objective was sort of an experiment. I don't think anyone realized that I knew, and Steve found out that day that I was going to turn heel the following night on Raw. I was going to do an interview where I turned heel on the fans. But we were the only two that knew that. And I don't know, even in Steve's case, that it necessarily helped him and I put the match together. But knowing that was going to be the end result. But I also knew, if I was, my instincts told me that Steve was also going to turn. I think Steve's attitude at the time was that he was going to try to resist that a little bit and try to stay heel for as long as he could, and maybe was going to turn eventually down the road, which is basically what happened. But I was like, I kind of knew it was a heel turn and a babyface turn all in the same match. And the psychology of that and just the way we orchestrated it I always think about, when I walked out to the ring, I got a pretty hearty cheer from everybody. I was the good guy and I was the hero going out. And when I walked back through the same crowd at the end of it, I was definitely the bad guy. And it was like, so what happened in 30 minutes or 35 minutes that changed all that? And that's the storytelling. I think that the reason I think that match was as great as they're saying it is today.
It's one thing to want to do that, but then to actually execute it and then have the fans fall in line. I'm wondering if you were nervous. You guys want to do this, but were you nervous about, like, hey, they love me so much. Are they actually going to get it? Are they going to turn on me as well?
I had no doubt in my mind. Like it's funny because Steve and I had worked at Survivor Series not that long before the match, and we kind of threw everything into that match, and that was a great match too. We threw everything but the kitchen sink into that match, and things developed over that time. I think when Sean forfeited the belt and all that, it was kind of like, I know heading into WrestleMania, I thought it was going to be me wrestling again, and it's like that got changed or altered, and suddenly it was like it's you and Steve again. And it's like we just wrestled each other and did everything. Like I thought I'd wrestle Steve. I love working with Steve, but at the time I was like, I'd rather work with Steve next SummerSlam, and by then we can kind of develop a new identities and have a new story kind of for them. And I thought it was time because I went over pretty straightforward and clean right in the Garden. And so when they said it was me and Steve, and then when we were told it was a no holds barred I quit match, it was like it really just puts a limit on the match. Like you lose all the false finishes. I remember going, it's the kiss of death. Like the Bob Backlund match I had a few years earlier was a similar thing, where the I quit match, and it was like it hampers the storytelling, and it limits you to what you can do. And I remember when I showed up in Chicago, Steve and I went out to the ringside, and he sat on the ring apron and I sat in the front row, and we just kind of talked to each other. And we were both like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. What the hell can we do? Like did everything, and so it was kind of this blank page. And, I just remember sort of thinking, like reassessing everything and going, this reminds me of a school fight. It reminds me back when I was as a kid in school. And it's like, I'm kind of like the popular guy in the school when everyone likes me, and maybe I'm the quarterback on the football team or something like that. And it's like, and you're this sort of badass kid that just came into the school, and you're causing all kinds of problems for everybody, and everyone's kind of talking about you. And there's that buzz in the hallways. And I can remember this in my own lifetime, where it was that kind of vibe. And it's like, and I remember we just started there. It's like, I see it like, when you and me get in the middle of the ring, I said, I think it should be, you just charge me, take me right off my feet, and we just start going at it. And then we just kind of just kept piecing it together, one little piece at a time. Like, then this would happen, and how about if we go out on the floor? Because that was the only directions we got from the office or Vince McMahon, was that you guys can fight through the crowd and go up through the barriers and up through the stands. We'll have security all around you, and you can do whatever you want. That was it. And the rest was up to us. And I can remember asking Steve, I said, what kind of holds you got? What kind of submissions? Because it's a submission match. And I said, I remember I named the ones I had. I said, I can put a figure four on. I can put a sharpshooter on. I can put a sleeper if I have to. I could put, we went through the different holds, and he was like, I think all he had was it's the tree stump puller. It's some kind of hold that he'd seen, which was a pretty good hold actually, and it hurt a lot when he put it on me. But that was it, and it was kind of like, all right, well, let's see what we got. And the way we just talked about it was like, all right, well, let's just to get the match going, let's brawl out in the crowd. We got Shamrock to Ken Shamrock was actually a big part of it, because he just gave that authority in there that we needed for the storytelling. And him watching us, and as we went through the crowd, fought all the way up through the stands, was at that time, and I don't know that it's ever been done before, but I know it was pretty intense. And we went up there and brawled all the way up through the crowd. I remember when I went to give Steve, or he punched me or did something to me and bent me over, and went to give me a pile driver. And I remember going, "Oh my God, don't give me a pile driver on the cement stairs! Like it's too dangerous." And next thing you know, I could tell he wanted me to give him a backdrop, and I ended up backdropping on the stairs, thinking that I would never do that. I would never want that done to me. But I appreciate and that tells me what kind of effort Steve was giving for the match. And Steve took a lot of hard bumps in that match, and we ended up brawling back through the ring. And then I think the storytelling is just it was. I always love how when I grabbed the bell, like I put the figure four on the post on Steve, which I'd never done before, and that was, again, it was something different and new and fresh. And I always thought, in my mind, I always like to do things that were fresh, that I'd never done before. I always try to think of something new, two or three things that I could do that I'd never done before, for fans that would go, geez, I've never seen that before. I've never seen that before. I've never seen that before. And the figure four on the post was one. And when I put that on, I remember going back over to the table, and I grabbed the bell, and then I walk over and I set the bell on the apron. And it was, I think, the drama of all that, of sort of going, I don't want to use, I want a chair. And I went back and got the chair. And then it wasn't the right chair. It's got to be the right chair. And I grabbed the metal chair with no padding on it and slid that in the ring. And I think it just was, it made people, they were like, oh, he's like, they understood, they forgot all about the bell. Everybody forgot about the bell. So they're sitting right on the apron, which I remember telling Steve, I said, they'll forget all about the bell. They will keep watching the match. If we just keep the focus on the action, they'll forget all about the bell, which is the key to the whole match. And, the chairs and the chair shots, both chair shots that Steve gave me were good, solid chair shots. Especially the one where I was on all fours, where he whacked me over the back, which I told him to do, or gave him permission to do it. I knew it was going to hurt, and it did. Mostly as like a slap sound, but it was really stung. And that's the realism of what you try to create. And I've always loved so many things in that match that we did. One of my favorite spots in that match is where I'm punching him in the corner, and I back up a little bit, and all of a sudden he laces me right in the crotch and kicks me right in the groin. When I always think of Ric Flair doing the ones where they give you the forearm up, it's like, come on, does that really even hurt? But the shot that Steve gave me, that's where you could feel the momentum change. And it was such a heel thing to do. But you could feel the audience sympathizing with Steve. And that was really such a beautiful layer to the match. That single move sort of sets the whole pace for the rest of the match. I just, the whole match and the way I just watched it, knowing I was going to do this interview. I watched it back yesterday. I haven't watched it in a little while, but it just makes me always feel so good when I watch it, because it's just such a fun match to watch. And you could see the emotions change. And at the very end, when I went back on Steve after I got the victory and started to stomp his leg, and Shamrock threw me down and all that, and then me and Ken Shamrock almost go toe to toe. And you could feel the explosion and like the fans ready to just go crazy again, like over that. And I remember, and my logic at the time was that I just had a hard fight. I'm not going to have another hard fight with another guy that's totally fresh. And so I've been, still baby face, but I walked out of the ring and left. And a lot of people saw that as a coward. But I think my fans that appreciated me were like, he shouldn't fight a guy that's fresh after he just had this match. And it was the sort of that balance of being a good guy and a bad guy that was so beautifully told. And Steve too, even when he went and did his finish on the referee, it was like, he's still a bad guy, and it was just a beautiful story. I loved it yesterday. I felt pretty good when I watched it. And I think, I don't believe if they were going to induct any other matches, the first one, I would go, it's not better than the Steve Austin match.
Legendary
my
match.
My heart of hearts, I go, that was the best match. And, that was one of the few matches that I can think of in those last years of some of the great matches that I had, where I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I didn't feel so beat up. It was great storytelling, and it was great professionalism. Like, it was all the kick in the groin never hurt. It was carefully thought out and orchestrated properly, where it was not a painful kick in the groin, because that's a pretty. And I remember telling Stevie, I said, if you're standing really close to me, you're going to kick me in the butt, but I got to pull my equipment up a little higher than normal, which I did. And I said, you got to reach around and kind of kick me in the seat of the ass, and I'll sell it the right way. But it was like, it wasn't like I would have felt pretty. It would have been. It was my idea, my move, and if it had hurt me, it would have been my fault. And Steve did such a great job. Even the chair shot, even the bell shot at the end of the match. The truth is, with the bell, I actually went right over his head. I missed his head by about, less than a quarter of an inch. The bell just went right over his head, but it never touched his head and never hurt him. never hit him on the actual skull, and he sold it fantastic, and that's what I love about that match. Is what I said many times is no animals were harmed in the making of that movie. It was just a fun. It was fun when we came back. Even the blood, which was a big no-no at the time. The blood. I remember when we came back, we pretended in the dressing room to have a heated argument about it, almost a scuffle where we almost kind of got into it again. And I remember Chief Jay Strongbow kind of pulling us apart or pulling me away from him, and it was all mostly just to kind of cover our tracks so we didn't get anyone into trouble, that it was an accident. And
Ah,
but it
brilliant.
was, we had to fool everybody. The only persons that knew about the blood were me and Steve, and we kept that pretty much a secret for. It would have been a secret for years until I wrote about it in my book. But again, it was to me the highest level of professionalism that you can get in a professional wrestling match. We both really worked really hard. We took a lot of hard falls, large hits with the chair and stuff like that. But we also really protected each other and looked out for each other. And it was, when they told me they were going to induct that match, it's like, well, they should. That was maybe the best match ever.
Your book, by the way, one of, in my opinion, the best wrestling book out there. I read it on my honeymoon, and I always wondered if you were going to write another one because I think the original plan was like a multiple volume series, right? But then you just went with the big one off the bat. Is there another one coming?
Yeah, I think so. I'm still working on it, kind of playing with it in my head. It's more. I mean, I don't know that I have much more wrestling to talk about, although I think I have some very interesting chapters about when I came back in
Yes.
2010 and did that whole storyline with Vince, which was, a lot of people don't think about it or rate it that much, or some people thought it was really bad or not very good stuff, pro wrestling wise. But I loved the stuff I did with Vince in that time period, and I was grateful for the opportunity to come back and rewrite my ending, so there wasn't quite the. I found as once I left WWF and retired from wrestling in 2000 and around that time period, it was always a bad ending, and people always, everything they talked to me about was sort of stuff that was triggered bad feelings and bad emotions, and was the screw job of work, and that was all pretend. I remember Scott Hall and different guys circulated this idea that it was all planned out and that me and Vince planned the whole screw job and it never was real, and which is not true. And I was always really frustrated that was the final chapter in my career in my life of wrestling. And when that whole opportunity presented itself with Vince, I knew it was a chance to rewrite the ending a little bit. And I don't know if it was the greatest ending. It wasn't the greatest wrestling that I ever did. And I don't, it was, but at the same time, it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed every bit of it. And I wouldn't change any. I think it was an important page for me to turn the corner and move on and get on with my life and not be, I've never been asked that much about the screw job, or at least whether it was real since then. It was, even though you'd think that you get bothered by that even more. But I loved the storyline that I did with Vince, and I thought it was some of the stuff we did was really good. And I thought the final match that I had at WrestleMania was everything you could hope for under the circumstances. And I was always really proud of it. I loved how it ended and what we did, and I would love to write about that. I mean, in fact, that would probably be the opening chapter of my second book if I can get the time to focus on it and write about that.
Do you ever think that we would see a time, a day and age where Vince McMahon is alive but not a part of WWE?
Yeah, I think we're kind of going through that now.
Yeah. Is it weird for you?
No, I feel that as great as he was, and as far as ideas and imagination, and in a lot of ways, there's nobody like him. At the same time, I feel that he kind of governed things in a shady way. Like he he didn't care necessarily about the craft. And like I always thought the fact that what he did to me, I was maybe his. I like to think I was his greatest artist, and in the end, I was just another. You know, get rid of him, boom, he's done. And um, I think as much greatness as Vince brought to wrestling, he also brought a lot of negative, kind of corrupted thinking to it, and it's kind of hard to explain. But I think that it's more. There's a little more integrity right now, and that the guys that are being pushed because they're talented and not because they're Vince's favorites.
Hmm. Do you watch the product now?
I try to. I do. I watch certain guys, and I try to watch the pay-per-views. I find in a lot of wrestlers, and I won't necessarily name anybody, but I find that the wrestlers are more actors pretending to be wrestlers today than actual wrestlers. Like I miss the ruggedness of the characters, like guys like Kurt Hennig and myself, or Dynamite Kid, or that whole era of wrestlers that broke into the business in the 70s or late 70s and early 80s. We kind of we were still we were from the Harley Race, Terry Funk kind of generation, trying to copy them or mimic them or top them. And I think that's why I still think the 90s was the best era of wrestling. When I watch some of that old 90s wrestling, it was really good. Really good stuff. And I find that today's wrestling, it's a little bit more about promos and your character on TV, and not so much your work rate. And I like guys that throw back a little bit more to the work rate. Like Roman Reigns is a guy that, for example, that I think tries really hard to earn the respect of my generation and be more realistic and just more credible, more believable, and not so much an actor. And I find that especially AEW, that I find that they're mostly actors trying to pretend to be wrestlers, and they ought to get on with this real wrestling and just quit acting so much.
Hey there, sorry to interrupt. Just want to remind you, if you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button. We would appreciate it very much. And while you're at it, give us a thumbs up too. We've got live shows, interviews, clips, and a whole lot more going on this here channel. All right, now back to the show. I was curious if you saw Cena's heel turn and what you thought of it, how it's being executed up until this point.
I didn't see it. I heard about it and was surprised by it, because I'm probably a guy that's, I think, said in the past that I don't think there's certain guys that just can't turn heel. It's like it's their style and their characters and the way, like, to me, British Bulldog never really was a great heel. He was a great wrestler, but when he turned heel, he was still doing press slams and power slams and strongman stuff, and he really didn't change his style too much. And he just had a different attitude. But heels need to be cheaters and sneaky and really get the ire of the crowd kind of thing, and it takes a different kind of skill to that. And I just found some guys, like, I didn't think Lex Luger was ever as good a heel as he was, as he could have been. Just his style, he mostly did strongman stuff, and like when he got heat in a match, he wasn't really cheating much. He was mostly just doing babyface stuff. And Bulldog was the same, and I thought the same for John Cena. That the way he looks, the way he works, he's going to still be doing power slams and running like strongman kind of stuff. And I didn't see him cheating, like pulling trunks to win, and rate choking guys and gouging eyes and the kind of stuff that, like, when I switched from heel to babyface or babyface to heel,
Mm-hmm.
you could see the style change. But I also remember sort of saying to myself that just because I turned heel doesn't mean I forgot how to do a drop kick. Like, why can't I still do a drop kick? You know, I can still do a drop kick and use that kind of psychology. Like, you're not limited to just doing cheating stuff, which I think is a mistake. Some guys that do turn heel suddenly can't wrestle anymore, and it's like that's not. You know, if your gimmick or character was a good wrestler, you need to still be a good wrestler, but you need to be just a more ruthless competitor. And as far as John goes, I know that I trust that John can pull it off. I haven't seen anything that he's done, including an interview. But it's not. I'll be honest. Before I heard that it happened, I would have said it's going to be hard for him to do that. And maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But it's hard to have been the character that he was, especially with the Make a Wish stuff. And he was like me. He was a long time hero. And when you turn bad, when you turn heel, it's kind of a fresh start for you as a character. Like you got to not be a good guy and resist anything that turns you into a good guy. And I thought I balanced that out pretty well. I kind of, because I'd worked heel, I was a heel before I became a baby face. And it's like, so I kind of reverted back to my old character as much as I could. And I think people understood that, like, oh, now he's cheating. He's no good now. And the Canada US stuff, of course, was, you know, gasoline and fire.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was like, but I trust John. John's a very capable. He's a very smart worker, and I'm curious to see how he pulls it off. And I look forward to watching him.
When we were talking earlier today, I said I'd keep you for 25 minutes or so. We're over that time. Do you have a couple more minutes? I just wanted to ask you a couple more things.
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate that. We won't keep you much longer, I promise, because one thing I've always wanted to ask you, I'll never forget this. When I was in the first grade, many, many moons ago, my parents surprised me with tickets to the Montreal Forum, the incredible venue that is no longer with us. In fact, I have like a newspaper ad right here, actually, in the studio from the Montreal Gazette from way back in the day that I put in here just to sort of remember those times. This particular one is, I think, from a few years later, but it was from it was an ad for the last event at the old Montreal Forum, and there you are, front and center. And the only thing I remember from that event that I attended, which was back in, I believe, '91, if my memory serves me correct, it was you versus Mr. Perfect, and I adored you. Like I said, there was no one I cared about more, and you guys were magic together. SummerSlam, I mean, all your matches were magic. But I remember the finish vividly, and I've never seen it since. I never saw it before. And the finish was, you guys had it going, I mean, back and forth. It was an all-out war, and he was out cold, and you crawled, and the ref went one, and you went on top of him, and the ref went 1, 2, and then the time limit bell went. And so it ended in a draw because you guys went the distance. And I remember as a kid being like, he was a second away from winning. Do you remember this? I'm sure you did it all across the country, different house shows and whatnot. But it was such a unique finish.
I do remember me, Kurt and I wrestling, and I do remember that when I first worked with him, that he always went over, and it was Kurt that said, because he didn't like Kurt was my biggest advocate or biggest supporter, and he went to Vince and said, I get more heat doing a 20-minute draw with Bret Hart than I do beating him. When I get a 20-minute draw and when it's a tie and I go back to the dressing room, and then Bret asks for 5 more minutes, and then I come out and I turn my back on Kurt when I think he's gone back to the dressing room, he charges back and slides under the bottom rope. He would always jump me and leave me laying, and then he would climb up on the top rope, and I'd hit him with a gut shot, and he'd crotch himself on the turnbuckle strut, which was always I don't know how he did that, but it was always, that was kind of the finish we did in most markets that I can remember. And that finish that you just talked about, I don't remember it, and I'm kind of glad that it was something fresh and different than what we did in a lot of places. But I will say, Kurt was if I could pick one guy to have one more match with in our prime, it would have been Kurt. I loved working with Kurt. It'd be either Kurt or Owen, and they were the most fun to work with. And Kurt was really the guy that helped. Him and Roddy were the two guys that helped launch me and get me up from sort of the middle of the card kind of and made me a main event guy. And I'll never forget that. And I loved working with Kurt, and he had a lot to do with my going on to win the world title and stuff like that.
You guys were tremendous together, and I'll also never forget WrestleMania 4, the Battle Royal, feeling like you got screwed by Bad News Brown. That's, like, talk about like pulling on the heartstrings and being emotionally invested in your, like, having a guy and wanting him to go over. I thought you won the Battle Royal, and then he hits you from the back and smashes you with the trophy. That to me felt like a turning point. I always say WrestleMania 4, one of my favorite WrestleManias. People don't talk about it as a great one, but for me, because of that Battle Royal and that moment, that's when I fell in love with you. That's when I said, like, okay, this is my guy, and I want to see him get over. I want to see him get propelled to the top.
I remember that time period, and I remember when Vince told me only a few days before WrestleMania that he wanted to turn me babyface and that split me up from Jim and all that. And I remember that was a big sort of question mark in my head. Because I loved being Jim's partner, and I loved but I also knew that here was a chance for me to, to get my big break as a single guy. And so I was like, I'll do whatever you want. But I remember Vince telling me that he had more fan letters than any other wrestler. I had more fan mail than any other wrestler in the company, and he couldn't figure out why. But he was going to go with me, and he was going to give me this big push, the real push, the one I've always been waiting for, the one that they've been telling me they were going to give me for so many years. And and they never did. That wasn't my big push. I went out and I wrestled Bad News and jobbed out to him right away, so that he could work with Hogan. And they kind of, I remember it was like a broken trust in the sense that they promised me everything and delivered nothing, and then later said that I didn't have enough charisma, or I was missing something, that they put me back into tags and put me back with Jim. But I was always like, I was ready for a big push, and they should have maybe found a way to make me rather than break me. And I think the fact that I went back with Jim and kind of got over still as a tag guy, and the Hart Foundation got over, won the belts again, and you could feel, I think then when Jim and I lost the belts the second time, that Vince promised me the big push and all that again. And I could tell, I wrote about it in my book, where there was the day after we lost the belts to the Nasty Boys, and they brought me to the TVs in Las Vegas, and right away they said, "You're going to work with Kurt Hennig for the title." He just won the belt from Kerry Von Erich, and I'm like, okay. And I said, "Who's going over?" And they're like, "Well, we're not changing the belt right now." And I said, "So you're going to put me in a match where I don't win again? And you're going to kill me off again?" Like I said, "I'm not doing it. I'll quit. I'm going to go home, take a break." And I stood my ground that day. And I remember Pat Patterson pleading me, like, kind of telling me, like, it doesn't really matter if you win or lose. And it's like, hey, trust me, it matters. And if you're not going to give me a push, and you're not going to let me win, if you're just going to turn me into a guy that never quite gets the job done again, then I'm going to go home and take a break. And they changed everything and put Bulldog with Mr. Perfect. And then that's when I kind of knew. I said that by SummerSlam, they're going to be going, we need someone to work with Kurt and win the belt. That's when I would be ripe for the pick, right? Like, it'd be perfect timing for me to win the belt from Kurt. And so that's how important it is sometimes in wrestling to use your own judgment. And I've been, left behind. I've worked hard enough and left, standing there by Vince and the the bookers and Bruce Pritchard and guys like that for so long that, and this idea that always, at that time, was that I couldn't cut a promo, or I wasn't a good mic guy. And I'm like, My attitude was that if I don't have anything, if I can't get the job done as a baby face, they start to look for guys that are going to get the job done. And it's like, if I go out and challenge somebody and then I don't win, you're kind of blowing my tire. Like I can't be, I can't be in the running for that. And it's hard to talk about. I remember, what am I supposed to say in my interviews? Like, oops, sorry, I lost last week, but here I'm going to beat this guy, and then you lose again, and you keep losing all the time. It does matter. Winning and losing does matter, and I'm glad I stood up for myself at that time.
I could talk to you for hours, Bret, but I want to let you go. This has been such a thrill. I want to thank our mutual friend Jesse Katz of Roots of Fight because for multiple reasons. A, for making this happen, but B, I never feel cooler when I go to my kids' school, when I'm going to the kids' soccer game, than when I'm wearing my Hitman gear from them. It's all I wear, and they've got incredible stuff over at Roots of Fight that they've done with you, dating back to the early days. There's CM Punk and others rocking the gear there. I have all of it, and I love the old school stuff with the Japanese writing. It's like I legit don't feel cooler than when I'm rocking your stuff because you're my guy and you're everyone's guy. And speaking of CM Punk, he said some very nice things about you recently to Roots of Fight. I just wanted to play this for you very quickly, and then we'll say goodbye. All right?
All right. Thank you.
Here it is.
Wayne Gretzky, Michael Jordan, Bret Hart. Bret Hart is the Wayne Gretzky of professional wrestling. And it's an empirical fact. It's not just an opinion. It's not just, oh, I love Bret Hart. It's proven. And obviously we know Bret Hart as the best WWE champion of all time. He was a guy who, like Piper, I looked at and I said, I can't look like the Ultimate Warrior, nor do I want to, but this guy's legit, and that's achievable to somebody like me. To have him as something that I can reach to, a goal to attain, I'll never come close, I'll always fall short, but shoot for the stars, wind up on the moon kind of thing. Like, Bret is the measuring stick, I believe, that all professional wrestlers should hold themselves to. Nobody better, ever.
So there you have it. From one of the top guys now, they all feel that way.
I really appreciate that. And, I know I heard like something a few months ago where Hulk Hogan was talking about me, and he said, the problem with Bret Hart is that he really does think he was the greatest wrestler of all time. And I remember thinking about that and going, yeah, maybe. Like that might be the most truthful thing he's ever said. And then I think, when you watch a lot of the wrestlers today, you don't see anybody imitating Hulk Hogan or Ultimate Warrior. You see a lot of the wrestlers today really trying their best to capture my style, or some of the guys that I worked with, like Dynamite Kid or Kurt Hennig and my brother Owen and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, they're wrestling my style, and that's the biggest compliment that I can get from today's generation is that.
That's an incredible point. God bless you, Bret. Thank you for everything. Congratulations on this incredible achievement once again. I'm so happy that you're being celebrated WrestleMania week. You deserve it. Many more of your matches deserve to be there as well. Wish the best to you, your family. Natty's doing amazing. We had her in studio a few weeks ago, and it's just amazing to see you thriving, happy, healthy, and getting honored this way, because you deserve that. From now until the end of time, you deserve more accolades. So I will stop there, but this means the world to me,
you,
and I really appreciate it.
Look forward to seeing you hopefully at WrestleMania.
Hopefully. Thank you so much, Bret. All the best to you. There he is.
Take care. God bless.
The great Bret the Hitman Hart. I mean, what can we say? Listen, you know how I feel, and I try to keep it professional. I think at the end there, he was like, all right, enough of this guy, all right? What am I, like Chris Farley talking to Paul McCartney? You know that skit on Saturday Night Live? Remember that time when you guys sold out Shea Stadium? It was awesome. But that's how I feel. That's how I feel. That's from the heart. That's a shoot, brother. That's from the heart. That's my childhood hero. And to have him on my show and to have him for 40 or so minutes, thank you so much to Roots of Fight. Thank you so much to Jesse Katz for making that happen. There's nothing that tops that for me, honestly. It's just, you would have told that kid in the doctor's office, 5, 6 years old, that one day he can have Bret Hart on the show and talk to him like that. Wouldn't believe it. And it is the truth. When I wear the guys can attest to it. I'm always wearing my Root to Fight stuff. Love the hoodies, love the jackets, love the sweatpants, love everything they have. The stuff is beautiful. Can we show them some of the stuff once again? Just one more time. Rootsofight.com. I never get more compliments than when I'm wearing my stuff. I've got a Mellow jacket, Syracuse one. They've done a great collaboration with Carmelo Anthony, which obviously speaks to me, near and dear to my heart. I was there when Mello won. Love the Roddy Piper stuff. Love the Macho Man stuff. Love the Ric Flair stuff. Love the Bret Hart stuff, obviously. The Punk stuff. The Roy Jones Jr. stuff. The Cassius Clay stuff. The Joe Frazier stuff. I even got some Pink Floyd stuff and some AC/DC stuff, which I know Frank has been eyeing. I mean, it's an amazing company. It's a Canadian company. And I remember meeting Jesse Katz many, many moons ago. It was the week of, I believe, Diaz BJ. So what was that? Why
do I want
39,
to say 137 or something?
137. Yeah, I think you're right. 137. And that's when he was just kind of launching. And I introduced him to was it 137?
Yeah.
I introduced him to our friend John Beer, and then you ended up working with them as well because you worked for the company. And to see all the collaborations and all the stuff that they're doing some 14 or so years later is pretty remarkable. What about Bret Hart on the show, Rick? What do you...
Incredible. I feel like you asked him about the Stone Cold match, and there was you didn't have to say anything. He just took it and went with it and talked about why it's the greatest match ever. I'm convinced.
Thanks for watching this video. Before you go, if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for us. Also, give us a thumbs up, leave a nice comment. These things go a long way. And while you're here, do check out the rest of the channel. We've got live shows and full interviews, clips, and a whole lot more. We're doing big things here, and we appreciate your support very much.